See, I would say that if you asked any woman, she would categorically deny
Oh, well,
that.
women categorically deny that they want men's resources as well. I wouldn't necessarily base an argument on what women categorically deny.
Basically, the topic I wanted to discuss was this underlying theme I've noticed characterizing nearly all of social discourse, almost without exception. You know, it doesn't matter if it's on the street, in the news, online, and even in MGTOW circles. It hit me the other day, and it's probably been around for a while, but, you know, when the kind of concept hits you that wraps a lot of topics up.
Yeah.
This kind of debate between discipline and recklessness, or, you know, abandon, as I kind of gave the working title as. And I mean, it's kind of like almost like the difference between objective numbers versus hope and fantasy, or excellence and luck. It's almost like a parent-child debate in terms of an archetype. And it doesn't matter if it's the topic's immigration, SJWs, or even weight loss, like we're talking about. It's kind of a theme I noticed. I know it's kind of it's something I'm sort of postulating, but what are your thoughts on that in terms of, because really it doesn't matter what topic it is. It's kind of this rational discourse versus this childish emotion where you can't go there, you can't discuss, you even give tough love because you're crucified.
Well, I mean, that's a big problem, is like, and I've spoken about this in some of my videos, where you have the issue of like fat shaming, where basically across the board being overweight is objectively bad. It's biologically bad, it's socially bad, it's ideologically bad, but, you know, you kind of have this, like, there are some corners of ideology that are growing around kind of like fat acceptance, where it's just like, oh, well, you know, enough women are fat now, and we don't want to upset their precious sensibilities, so we have to start pretending like being fat's okay. And it's like, like at the individual level, you know, it causes all kind of health problems. At the societal level, those like particularly in our country, right? Like we got a universal healthcare system. Those fat people are a burden to the rest of society that has to, you know, carry their weight, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, when lap band surgery is covered under Medicare here, you know, things like that. I think it's also, it might tie into, you know, how I mentioned, doesn't matter what the topic is in the mainstream media, like even say immigration, it's all, you know, they wrap up the language like, you know, tolerance. And so it's tolerance across the board, tolerance of violence, you know, in the, especially here, you've heard in Melbourne, the amount of immigrant
gangs.
that are roaming around. So it's tolerance of being fat, tolerance of unhealthy, dysfunctional behavior in society, and you're supposed to tolerate everything. And it's almost like this badge of honor, and it's like this virtuous badge of honor to tolerate and be walked all over. You know, be Christ on the cross, and that's a great thing because everyone will pat you on the back.
Yeah, I guess the problem is that there's always like a precarious position where you get the whole, like, you know, being tolerant of intolerance. So it's like, where do you draw the line where it's just like fat acceptance is the way we should be doing it, or should we be fighting against, you know, Nazism? And then where do people like you and me fall in the middle, where, I mean, some of the things that we say are far from politically correct. Like the vast majority of people would probably, you know, lump us into the same kind of, the same basket of ideological degenerates as like neo-Nazis or something. You know, oh, you're misogynists that hate women. It's just like, I guess the problem is that the same argument could be made to to basically say that our opinions shouldn't be tolerated either.
Look at almost every avenue of entertainment, and a lot of first they started in the universities with actual information and education that they teach you in universities, and universities should be about opposing viewpoints and finding your own voice and kind of debating, but that was kind of cut off there. And then they moved into all the entertainment realms. So now even comedians that are telling jokes, all of a sudden comedians aren't telling jokes when they get on a particular topic that affects one particular snowflake. I think it was Bill Burr that said, he goes, you're laughing at my fat jokes, you're laughing at these jokes, but when I get onto the particular thing you're sensitive about, all of a sudden I'm not making jokes, I'm making statements. And he says, when did I start making statements? People have no, literature, when we start sort of censoring words in the English language, it's over the last couple of years, in a really short amount of time, I have to keep up with words that I can no longer say. And then I have to replace them with other words. So, okay, now I can't say this word, but I'm allowed to say this one that implies somehow I'm joking or I'm being tongue-in-cheek. But then enough people kind of go, that's become common. I'm sick of hearing it, and I identify with that word the same way I did it as the other one. Get rid of that one too. And it's this kind of getting your magnifying glass out, trying to search for whatever's left in the dictionary that you're allowed to say. So it's like freedom's being curtailed, intellect, the expression of it, because you're limiting the words as well. And if you do, and that's nothing to do with logic even if you kind of slalom around these words trying to get to your point and try to convey some argument that you want to get to, the moment someone kind of sees where you're weaving towards, it's like, I don't like how you're making me feel. So how are you, so I was saying this to someone a while ago, it's like, how are we supposed to communicate? Let alone, progress is almost slowed down to a really slow pace because we can't actually take those steps forward in language. Because, in terms of discipline versus undiscipline and laziness and whatever you want to call it, is kind of this resignation where from language to thought, it's almost like people give up. And I mean, you could correlate it to, say, men going their own way. You get to a certain point where it's just not worth fighting anymore. So say correlating it to women, okay, I can't do this now. Now I can't touch this. I can't go there. I can't open this door. And you get to the point where not only there's no more doors to open to actually engage with, say, physical people like women, now they curtail your language and your thought. And it's almost like, how much do you want to snuff out of the human spirit, let alone language and all those kind of things? And so they're getting rid of all this kind of almost adult, the world's becoming very childish. And I know it kind of works for the system and the machine in certain ways, mindless consumption, more people on antidepressants, a lot of fragmented kind of job opportunities and spending happens from a lot of this chaos. I kind of get it. It's I'm actually finishing off a video about sort of just in a peripheral way, talking about chaos theory and how it actually works today, and how it relates to the child mind and how it actually works in this kind of central, logic and all these kind of things don't tend to work. And so they're figuring, men tend to save. We'll buy that one car, that one house, but we're really kind of careful with our money because we identify with, being that human doing. So we value money and we're very, very careful with it. Whereas women aren't, because they never had to be. And so they're just kind of buying a pair of shoes they love today and then buying another 20 pairs by next week. So it's this recycling of consumption. But I think it all plays into this child mind, and I just noticed this, adult trying to really debate with a child, yet the child is holding the microphone socially, and they're kind of switching it on and off, or pulling the ejector seat and ejecting the person that's trying to use their prefrontal cortex. Everything's about, keep the women smiling, don't make anybody frown that hasn't got a penis. Oh, that's not true, actually. If you're a cross-dresser, you'll be in their camp as well. But it just crossed my mind about this. And I was listening to, like I mentioned to you before, that a lot of things were suggesting this. And then a day or so ago, I think I was listening to an old conversation between you and Stardust where I can't remember what you were talking about. It's one of those videos where you talked about a number of things, but one of them you're talking about identity politics. And I thought even that, when there's no intellect, when you can't argue reason, where all you're left with is appearance. And so the debate is now, my perception of my identity or my fashion is right and yours is wrong. And so how do you argue with that? It's become almost dress-ups. I'm arguing, is my football team better than yours? Like, really, you've got no reason, you've got no choice but to walk away. It's like, I don't want to waste my time speaking with you. And it's a rational thing to do, but you kind of find yourself pushed out of society. Not that I'm boo-hooing about it, but I don't know.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts about it?
I think a lot of the problems come down to an issue of economic trade-offs. So, like, even on the issue of like football, my football team, for example, what's the economic trade-off of supporting, Adelaide when you live in the Port Adelaide area? Those two areas hate each other. So, a lot of it seemed like, I would think, like, the main thing seems to be getting back to one of the sort of previous topics is, what is the threshold that is the cutoff? So if you think about it in terms of like an eBay auction, where you're prepared to spend, you value this item as X number of dollars, and the auction price goes above that, basically the auction item goes above the price that you're prepared to pay for. So you basically cut your losses and stop bidding. And I think it's the same thing with a lot of these things, where when you talk about, I don't know, various things that have changed, like, fat acceptance as an example. Basically, I think what's happened is, like, the social value of those things has dropped so much that the threshold that society in the auction of what's acceptable, society is like going to call you a fat shamer at a much lower threshold than what they previously would have. Like, the economy on a lot of these things has changed. But there is still kind of like I don't know that we could necessarily put a clear quantifiable number on a lot of this stuff, but yeah, the value on a lot of these things has dropped, and it's changed the economic marketplace of what the acceptable threshold for these things is.
So in a sense, you're saying that the benefit for, say, logic and reason and excellence and discipline and all those kind of things is fairly low today. Yeah. Okay, I get you.
I mean, the market's dropped out of those things entirely. I don't know, like you're mentioning Coterie. There was a video that he did where he's talking about the fact that we've even moved beyond the information age into the experience age, and what people value now are experiences. And if you I don't know, I guess if you come out with something that comes across as a negative experience to somebody, it's like kind of, it's a social faux pas.
Or if anything, it's still sellable, like a gotcha moment or a oh my god moment, like the Harvey Weinstein thing. Even negative ones are sellable. So the
Yeah.
experience, even if it's negative, it's got great. We can make money off this. This trends, even if it's negative. One person can kind of be destroyed, whereas a whole bunch of us benefit because we're clicking through articles and we're buying papers and we're
Yeah, and like you look at some of the other things that are coming out about. I mean, from what I understand, Oprah Winfrey's trying to springboard off the back of that to basically go for a 2020 election run. Like, this is basically trying to catapult herself off that political capital.
Yeah, you're right about the experience thing, because I'm thinking, like, when you look at discipline, I've forever thought. I mean, it makes sense. Like for all the stuff, when you're a person, let's face it, mostly when you're a guy who uses the front of his brain a lot more, you tend to sort of be driven by things making sense and sort of organization and things fitting together and work, 1 + 1 equaling 2. Where the society, when it doesn't actually value that. So discipline, almost fixing problems, is almost a redundant thing in society. They want to create more problems, more drama. It sells more papers, you get more click-throughs, whereas the male propensity towards discipline and efficiency, if you like, and 1 and 1 equaling 2, and that's it, a mathematical kind of that kind of discipline where you clean things up, that doesn't actually go anywhere. When you see the way the world works with experiences and how it's connected with money and selling and media.
I guess where I was going with it was, like, if you were to divide it, like if you were to divide this thought process into discipline and abandon, as you put it, and there's a line down the middle, like that's the threshold that is crossed between discipline and abandon, where somebody is disciplined up to a point and then they cross that threshold and then they abandon what they're doing. I mean, that's kind of why I brought up the whole like eBay auction thing, where you've got like a set limit that you won't go past. I don't know that it's necessarily a male-female thing. I think everyone has that mindset of cost benefit, where they have a threshold that is their limit of what they're going to expend to what they get. I don't know that it's necessarily that, logic is by its very nature disciplined. I think it's more that logic has its benefits, but if the cost benefit of being logical is too high for women, why would they invest in that? Like in terms of like discipline of this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to stick to it, why would women even do that in the first place when they can just put on the crocodile tears and, play the victim and get whatever they want? Like it's not economically viable for them to be disciplined in that way. It might be viable for them or beneficial for them to be disciplined in other ways. Like they might, like, if I go to the gym and I keep a rockin' body, I can get more guys to do what I want. Like to them, it's entirely possible that looking good has a higher value than being logical. So in the cost benefit world of what they're going to invest in, they're more likely to be disciplined towards keeping up their appearance than keeping up their sort of mental capabilities.
Sure. I mean, some of this stuff also might have to sort of, there's tentacles reaching into, women have a lot more influence now socially, commercially, and all that stuff, which is why this kind of that threshold you're talking about in the middle between discipline and abandonment
Yeah.
is leaning so much more towards the abandonment side, which is the sort of the child, immature,
Yeah.
lazy side. I kind of get that. Mine is all the stuff that is lost. I mean, all the stuff that aside from how women treat men, I'm talking about everything apart from that. The dominoes, how they fall actually in the culture, the motivation to even be disciplined, the motivation for excellence. Talk about like all the, the language curtailment. I understand what you're talking about that threshold, and I understand that it's so leaning towards the being childlike and being less like a rational adult and thinking more like just a lazy fuck it. What's the consequence if I'm not disciplined? Again,
Well, I guess that's the thing I was getting to was that, or sort of trying to get across was that I don't think that I actually don't think that people have changed in any significant way. I think that the environment's changed, and essentially that threshold has shifted such that what is expected from women and what society is prepared to give them has shifted. Like, as an example, right? Like, I guess if you're to play the traditionalist, nuclear family card, the man goes out and works and the woman stays at home, and part of her, like, the guy's at work for 8 hours a day and he does his daily grind, and while he's at work the woman looks after the kids and does the laundry and cooks dinner and does all the dishes and all. Basically she's in charge of the domestic duties. And in the last 50 years, between dishwashers and washing machines and things like Thermomixes, her job has got a fuckload easier. Like, how much, like, between all of those devices that automate the jobs that she used to have to, like, back 100 years ago, she used to have to, like, stand over the tub and basically clean the clothes over a washing board, right? Like, that was hard work, but that's gone now. So essentially what's expected of her has dropped significantly. Like, that threshold of cost benefit has widely swung.
I would agree, like, completely with you. That's the terrain we're looking at the moment. My kind of frustration is what's lost, and the people, and it's not just me boohooing men. I'm more or less in your camp in terms of self-determinist or biological determinist. But even if you're trying to be sympathetic, even to women, they're not happy. They're a lot more unhappy because it's lent so much past the threshold into the abandonment area and the slack, can't say boo, I have to keep the baby happy and smiling, it can never cry area. That it's just frustrating when the fingers are constantly pointed always at another, and not just men. It's always someone else's fault. And this is what I keep coming back to. The terrain you're describing, I'd agree with. Mine is the frustration of the whining, the not taking responsibility. Okay, if it's moved this way, we can. It's another topic to argue how much benefit women give, how much they work, etc., etc., etc. But mine is they're not even happy about it, and the culture is more complicated, yes, more fragmented, and a lot gets lost because you can't keep an eye on so many spinning plates. One plate crashes, they start another one spinning. women are the highest takers of antidepressants. Just like sometimes I think, what will it take if you're feverishly, you've chained, you're not just holding back the threshold from, the pendulum slightly swinging back to discipline and common sense and rationality, whether or not you agree it's a male or female thing. It's rationality is rationality. Reality is reality. Men tend to gravitate and find more interest in it than women, okay? But if you just think of it as a concept, it's like they've chained the pendulum from swinging back to a fucking oak tree, and they will not let it go back, even in the face of the higher rates of depression. I mean, I suppose if women started actually dying and committing suicide, maybe they will. But maybe the financial system crashing, like a lot of people said, would force this is about the only thing that'll force it to start swinging back. But I want to bring it back to this kind of discipline, lazy abandonment sort of child mind that wants to eat chocolate cake, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and go to bed at 3 a.m. and never go to school. This kind of mind, that's dysfunctional. That's the kind of thing that's annoying me.
Well, I guess like I'm actually working on some scripts at the moment, so hopefully I'll have some videos coming out soon-ish. But one of them that I want to explore is I'm essentially making a video about International Women's Day, and my thesis is essentially that women suffer from an enormous collective inferiority complex. And part of that is derived from what I spoke about, where the jobs that women previously performed, right, they're all automated now. The dishwasher washes the dishes, the washing machine cleans the clothes, the microwave and the slow cooker can do what, back in the day, my grandmother used to have to slave away in the kitchen for 2 hours. Now you just dump your shit in, the slow cooker and it does its thing, and then you get dinner at the end. And that's not even taking into account things, like I said, like Thermomixes, where you don't even have to do slow cookers, you have to actually cut the vegetables up and stuff, whereas Thermomixes are essentially a pressure cooker with a food processor on the top. So you just dump your shit in there and it feeds you, I don't know, what looks to me like dog food at the end, but it's kind of the thing is though, and this is it, the only people I know that have bought Thermomixes are stay-at-home mothers who are I've got 3 kids and the Thermomix saves me so much time throughout the day. So it's okay, you're already a fucking lazy stay-at-home parasite, and now you're doing even less. It's I think what has happened, and the reason that women are so depressed now, is they did, if you go back 150 years, there was clearly a gendered division of labor, but, labor was being performed. The men were going out and working in the workplace, and the women were basically, in charge of domestic duties. Fast forward to 2018, and when we look at the things that are being done in society, the gender divide on a lot of those things hasn't really changed that much, right? Women aren't doing construction. No. Women aren't going into IT, even cooking. This is something that I'm going to be talking about in my video. We mistakenly associate cooking with the feminine. However, less than 20% of professional chefs are women. And if we actually look at accomplished, successful chefs, something like female chefs account for less than 1% of Michelin stars that are awarded. So women, the gender divide hasn't changed as much as we would like to think. Women haven't actually, now that all the gender barriers have broken down, women haven't necessarily gone out and started entering those areas of the workforce. But their traditional roles are all basically automated now. So they're almost stuck in a limbo where it's just like, what's the fucking use of you? And I think on some level, women realize this, and they're like I said, they are beginning to suffer from a collective inferiority complex where they're not prepared to go and do the hard work on construction sites that men do, but their traditional gender roles have been replaced with household appliances. So they're kind of like, on some level, they realize that all they're fucking good for right now is opening their legs.
Well, yeah, I mean, I immediately thought about when you described that sort of picture, that you need to sort of like progress in whichever way you want to talk about it, technological and even as a human species. Before we had the horse and carriage, and then we moved on to the car, and you keep progressing. Whatever men were doing there with horse and carriage, you have to move on and you find something else to do. But you can't stay in stasis and go, okay, take this away from me. Oh, now I can do nothing. Take this away from me. Now I have, and then you leave yourself in an empty room. And it doesn't surprise me that there's crickets and they're depressed and they have no purpose, because it's always the cliche that women tend to be have a lot of insecurities about them. It seems like by accommodating their lives so much, and with tech making everything not just easier, but almost like you've removed it from any kind of interface with their lives where they can actually do things. It's almost like it's gotten from, your job used to go from, washing clothes and keeping a household that used to take you most of the day at a leisurely pace, or half the day. Now it's kind of like it's over in an hour or so, and you don't know what to do with your time, and you're staring at the void. When they make the jokes of like women can read as many books as they want, and they can gravitate to, they've got the freedom to sort of be and do whatever they want, but they just don't, because they don't have this desire to sort of, I call it that adventurous spirit, to sort of discover, you've mentioned it in terms of motorcycle riding, but I said in terms of whenever I talk to women about climbing Mount Everest, the vast majority kind of raise their eyebrows whenever you tell them stories of men climbing it, and it's hard to describe exactly why, and they just say, "Oh, what a fucking idiot." And
and that's like case in point, right? Like,
they don't have that in them.
But even the women that do, like, you look at so many achievements that women have made through history, right? So like Sir Edmund Hillary was the first guy to reach the summit of Mount Everest, 29th of May 1953, right? 2 decades later, Japanese, what's her name, Junko Tabei, she climbed up Everest in 1975, and it's like first woman to climb Everest. Give her. It took them 2 decades, but they finally did something that men did, 20 years before, and it's. I mean, this is a lot of stuff that I'll be talking about in my next video, but like, you even look at, so. I'm probably
with an all-male Sherpa team as well.
Yeah, well, actually, no. She was part of I believe she was part of a Japanese female climbing team. So I don't know how many males they had. So I don't necessarily want to, discount the fact that happened. But the fact is that it still happened 20 years after a man did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm probably spoiling shit from my next video, but I think a great example is nursing. So I stumbled across this study by PubMed, published on PubMed, where they were talking about the fact that 90% of registered nurses are females, right? Nobody's surprised by that. But 30% of first authors who are actually writing nursing literature in like published nursing and medical journals are male. So even in areas that women are overwhelmingly the dominant demographic, men are still excelling at rates 3 times higher than they are. Like, and the excuses they give is like, you know, oh, women have like family and social obligations, which to me is like, you know, social obligation. She wants to go out drinking instead of putting in the hard work that her male colleagues do. But yeah, I mean, it's like women will enter these fields at rates far higher than the men do. But once they're there, they don't seem to have, even though it's a female-dominated field, they just don't seem to have the drive to then excel within that field.
I think like what I said. I think you're right, but there's that whole underlying, when you take not just what used to be kind of how a female contributed in sort of being symbiotic to sort of the running of a society with men, right? It's not just taking that away, but leaving her with nothing, and her perpetually wanting nothing as well. Like you lighten the load, you know, I'll take this load off your back, and it's kind of like nature wants, you know, abhors a vacuum, and so you just keep creating a vacuum, and it's easy to see, and it's followed on to men as well. Like men have kind of reacted to the way women have sort of molded their lives socially, and, you know, with their politics, and men have kind of in a makeshift way, and men going their own ways is a makeshift reaction to this way as well, is trying to kind of find something to do. But I think men, even though there'll be friction in them trying to find something, I think they're mentally a bit more. They have the ability to do it a bit more, because that women don't seem to have that Everest climbing spark. Yeah. So when there's the voids there, men get this nervousness, maybe because they're the human doings, and so they have to find something, some kind of abstract or existential Everest to attach themselves to. So then there's innovation, there's, you know, chemistry, like look into these realms where there's nothing, that looks like it's virtually magic, and then you can actually quantify it with science and numbers and maths. Women see what's in front of them. Like you took away the washing machine, it's like, fuck, I don't know what to do now. Oh, look, there's Oprah. That can kind of sedate me until the husband gets home, or my boyfriend gets home.
I think that's the big problem, is that, one of the things that I didn't necessarily agree with what you said was that I don't think things have been taken away from women. I think their free time, like their time has been freed up. They could be doing other things. And that's the big difference, is that in that vacuum of free time, they haven't filled it with anything else. And even, I mean, you look at like professional nurses. I mean, they're busy people, but somehow the male nurses still find the time to publish their white papers and stuff at a rate 3 times higher than the women do. I think you pretty much nailed the thing on the head when you said that it was, you know, women haven't filled this free time with something else. You know, women haven't pursued something else now that these things haven't been taken away. Domestic duties have been freed up, and women haven't filled that gap with something else. I do. I think there's a fundamental problem with, and I guess this is what I think is the fundamental problem, is that women don't have a propensity for that kind of exploration and stuff. And as a result, that is why they're suffering from what I would call a collective inferiority complex, where they've got all this free time now. And, you know, with even with construction and stuff, I mean, you don't have to be a strong man of old to do a construction job. It's accessible to virtually everyone. And the fact that women haven't pursued those things, like the fact that women haven't filled that free time with other pursuits like this, they do sit around and look at themselves and go, well, what have I achieved with all of this extra like free time? Fucking nothing.
So what did you term it as? A collective what? Again? Collective
inferiority complex.
See, I would say that if you asked any woman, she would categorically deny.
Well, women categorically deny that they want men's resources as well. I wouldn't necessarily base an argument on what women categorically deny, but
it's almost like a collective insecurity that's just and malaise that just is getting worse. Yeah. It's that again the refusal to point to reality and just feel better about letting go of being right and saying I've had everything taken away. Like you take everything away. I'm not, and don't miss. I don't mean to say that women's lives are somehow like a lot of their purpose has been taken away by their insistence, and they've welcomed a lot of this technology and a lot of the ease with which now they can have it all, so to speak, even though they can't. But they can be and do everything. So I think a couple of things might be going on depending on who you ask. But I think whether it's men or women, they like the idea of freedom. So, take away these shackles, whether it's a washing machine or you ask some guys who are blue-pilled I wish I was single. And the moment they're single, they're a nervous wreck and they can't wait to be attached again. People like the idea of freedom.
I think, Turd Flinging Monkey did an excellent video about this recently, I think, where he's talking about like essentially returned servicemen, where the problems that they face is that they effectively, like, there's nothing that a group help session can really do for them, because the problem is a bit more fundamental than that, where they've built their entire life about being in service to their country and all of that other stuff, and then they come back home and that persona's gone. They've essentially got nothing left after that. This is, and it's the same with the divorced man, right? Like, his whole world is supporting his wife and family, and then the wife divorces him. The wife takes half of his shit. The wife takes the kid. What's he got left after that? That was like essentially his whole construct for doing anything.
Yeah, I was thinking also about, even in reaction, say, women have collectively, like, I kind of visualize a room that's just getting emptier and emptier, where at least they had things of purpose they could sort of engage with that was part of what most of them wanted to do. And, I can just imagine women saying, I'm not like that. They love this kind of thinking of themselves as these autonomous individuals that would, these Marie Curies or these, climbers that would climb Everest. This again, I touched on it before, but I think both men and women, they love the idea of freedom, and I think a lot of this, get rid of my shackles, whether it's a washing machine or my girlfriend, and then I can do X, Y, and Z, and life will be great. They find that it's not, but they don't want to admit what I mentioned about that letting go of. Okay, enough of the suit of armor. Let fucking go of that. Admit, I fucked up. Collectively, as women do, but men tend to have a better way of doing it, even individually. Like, a lot of men will kind of, if you not push them, but if you kind of talk to them one-on-one or a small group, if they fucked up, they'll tell you they fucked up. But the contortion and the Sex and the City sewing circles of women, I was out the other night, and, I was out with a friend, and there were literally 3 groups outdoor on this warm summer night. They were like in their 40s and 50s, all dolled up, attempting to look fuckable, and they were in their kind of Sex and the City groups. And I just said to my friend, what do you think they're talking about? And he just said men. Whether in the negative or the positive, it'll either be men or what she said and he said. And sort of with this vacuum left, it's just frustrating that you don't want to be happy just to let go of something. You don't even have to do anything as a person.
Yeah.
Your rooms become emptier, and you're taking antidepressants, yet you're still using sophistry to fool people. And I know it might be connected to, say, a woman needing that's a reflexive instinct to get men or get sympathy or be protected. You know, she's not the person of action. She does it by fiat, by, you know, secondary kind of sophistry and, you know, the tilt of the head and all this stuff, you know, making things come to her. She never goes towards anything. But the insistence, the kind of obstreperous, kind of loud, you know, don't tell me what to do, spitting at men kind of way. It's like, man, do you even care about your own happiness and like putting a rope around your head potentially?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's something that guys occasionally face as well, in some areas. Like, I mean, I know personally, you know, I've got shit to do, but instead I spend the entire weekend playing video games. And then I'm at work on Monday morning and I'm thinking to myself, I achieved fucking nothing this weekend. I think that's part of the problem. Is I occasionally feel that, where I eat too much and I drink too much and I just binge on video games and watch movies all weekend, and I get to the weekday and I'm like, I just wasted 48 hours. But the thing is, like, I've wasted 48 hours, yeah, but I've still got other projects on the back burner that I need to get to, like restoring old motorcycles and, you know, working on my woodworking and stuff. But I think the problem is women don't like, they haven't pursued, they're not interested in other shit like restoring motorcycles. So when they have all this time freed up, effectively they shop and they hang out with friends, and then at the end of it, it's kind of like, oh, what have I done this week? I've done nothing. I've spent money on a new blouse and shoes, and I drank with my friends, and I've achieved nothing. That's what happens for me occasionally when I binge on video games for a weekend. That's these women's entire fucking lives.
Yeah,
They don't have any sort of set goals. They haven't pursued any. It's like I caught up with a friend recently, and I'm like, she asked me, she's like, oh yeah, are there any women, you know, in your life at the moment? And I'm like, there's no women here. Like, no, there's no, you know, there are no women here. And she's like, oh yeah, there are, you know, there's plenty of women. And I'm like, there's not. No women in you know, that are, you know, I would consider worth pursuing. And she's like, oh, that's just completely wrong. There's plenty of women. I know heaps of women. And I'm like, that are interested in the same things that I am. And she's like, oh yeah, you know, there's women around that are interested in the things that you're interested in. I'm like, so how many women do you know that own motorcycles, that own, you know, old school jacked up 4-wheel drives? How many women do you know that are into playing Wolfenstein and watching shitty 80s sci-fi? And she's just like, nothing. Like, she's got, like, for all her talk about, oh, there's plenty of women out there, none of these women are interested in the things that I'm interested in. I was like, you know, they're not, as far as I can tell, women aren't interested in anything. They're interested in spending money. They're interested in shopping and buying things and showing off how much, you know, the husband is willing to frivolously waste on her. To an extent, they're interested in playing with the kids, but that gets tired after a while. And frankly, playing with the kids isn't really, it's not an achievement. It doesn't, like, there's nothing created at the end of it. Like, even from the extent of just riding a motorcycle. You know, a year ago, I did a big trip around sort of like the, you know, various parts of the lower east coast of Australia. So, you know, through like the Victorian Alps and, you know, Western New South Wales and stuff like that. And it's a great experience. And it's like, even from the standpoint of getting on a motorcycle and riding for 6 hours a day through that country creates an experience. And it's like, what have women done? Like, they don't do that stuff. They don't. Occasionally, like, you know, if they've got a boyfriend, the boyfriend will take them on the back of the bike, or the boyfriend will take them camping or something. But women very, very rarely go out and even create those kind of experiences for themselves.
Yeah, it's true. I've mentioned in my videos that experiences, pretty much everything, they want it handed to them like flowers. And then that's the way they appreciate things. But effort is kind of, it doesn't give them a tingle. It's very unmotivating to them. Whereas a guy gets some sort of, he feels this kind of fulfillment, that tactile, purposeful kind of action-orientated stuff, which is another reason, you know, why there's very few women that can understand why a man would want to climb Everest, with such a high risk rate, yet they can't understand why a man won't get married. It's kind of baffling.
Yeah.
It's I know that the latter involves them. That's why they can't see it. But it's interesting what you said about the video games, where you can play a video game for a short period of time, and when you snap out of it, you can calibrate yourself back to discipline, shake it off, and still sort of, you know, you can get back to doing something. But I think you actually sort of, it's a good descriptive of it, where women tend to float and do that in their lives constantly. I know myself, when I'm with women, it's very much shopping, eating, and fucking together. And usually just watch movies and eat, and you start gaining weight, and you kind of do very little. And the girl I'm with currently, I have to constantly tell her, like, I can't catch up these days because I need time to myself. And I think guys tend to, because they like being with them, is they forget what kind of makes them tick as well, like in terms of yourself. You kind of hand yourself over. It's like another adventure. Like, you think, like your video games, you think, I'm doing all this creative stuff and I've got a few things on the boil. I'm writing a script, I'm doing a video, I'm riding my motorbike, I'm getting fit. Oh, here's another adventure. I'll just put all this stuff on hold and then I'll enjoy this. But the point, the thing that happens is that's a one-way street. You're not going back to the things you put on hold. Guys think they can, like a video game. I'll block out the world temporarily and I'll immerse myself, and I'll go all out into this video game or woman or relationship. But then I can just, you know, click pause on it and go back to the shed or the garage and work on my car or bike or script. And it's like, no, you're scraping for crumbs, you know, at 10 at night when you're dead tired after the kids and family and work, to try and actually get your brain working enough to be productive. And if you're doing something creative that requires abstract thought and creativity, forget it. Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that. I'd agree. Their whole life is kind of listless, floating, enjoying kind of these experiences that are handed to you. Like, you know, you play video games, there's a little bit of interaction, but you're generally carried away into the world, and you kind of, you know, you're floating. You let yourself fall into this world like you fall in love, but the game ends. The game actually tells you when it's over. You get to the end of a stage, or the alarm clock goes off, or you fall asleep. You know, something actually snaps you out of it, even if you're in a trance, if it's that enthralling. But women with their rooms constantly getting emptier and emptier, and not allowing, you know, I say discipline just because that stuff is kind of rational to me. I mean, I'm sure a lot of guys, you know, don't hate women, but would like relations just to be a little bit easier, even if they don't want to have anything to do much with the old traditional game anymore in society. It's almost like, because that's dead, almost everything else is dying, and that's what I don't like seeing, because I'm seeing a lot of stuff, the progress in even entertainment being repetitive, from movies to
Oh yeah.
storylines and stuff. So with the death of all that and the room becoming emptier and men reacting to that room becoming empty and opting out and saying, why the fuck should I work? Why the fuck should I look for my next Everest? I'm just happy here. I'll be content. I don't need to strive. I don't need to even remember the word called excellence.
I think like men are always have that drive to actually do something with their time though. I mean, this is the whole thing with, I always sort of come back to motorcycle riding as an example, but women always want to, like, guys like motorcycles. Women always want to go on, like, ride on the back of a motorcycle with a guy, but they never go out and buy their own fucking motorcycle and do it themselves. Like, they don't want to. But I mean, even on the issue of like they're just not willing to make that commitment. I mean, even on the issue of like the dumbing down of entertainment. Barbarossa recently was like hammering it into me. You got to check out this series, Black Mirror. Like, just nonstop. Check out Black Mirror. Check
yeah,
out Black
I've seen
Mirror.
it.
Yeah. So I downloaded it and I started watching it, and I'm like, it's an anthology series, so some episodes are, some episodes are better than others, but I'm fucking loving it. So anyways, like last weekend, I'm laying in bed. It's a Saturday morning, and I've just woken up. I've gone and made myself a coffee and gone back to bed and turned the TV on, and I've, anyways, lady friends dropped around, and I'm sort of in bed, so we let's watch an episode of Black Mirror together. The episode, in case you're interested, was White Bear, which I actually don't think was one of the better episodes.
Which series and which?
I think it was actually series 1. I think it was still series 1.
Refresh my memory, because that was a while ago. What was White Bear about?
So effectively, this girl, it's like a post-apocalyptic thing, and this girl wakes up and she's got amnesia, and it turns into this survivalist sort of thing, and she meets up with these people and they kind of protect each other, and they get to the end, and then it turns out that this girl is actually a convicted child killer, and they've effectively, society, the twist at the end, there's always a twist in Black Mirror, the twist at the end is that they've effectively turned her judicial punishment into a theme park for the rest of society to kind of like revel in her torment. So I didn't think it was a particularly great episode of Black Mirror compared to other episodes, but the twist at the end was still kind of like a novel, thought-provoking concept. And the girl that watched it with me the whole time is just like, I don't understand what's happening. This is the stupidest fucking show I've ever seen. Like, what the fuck was that? That was just shit. And keep in mind, this is a girl that watches the fucking Kardashians. And it's just like, what do you make of that? Like, she loves the Kardashians, but like the concept of like how far should like judicial punishment infringe on the rights of people and stuff, that's just like, this is fucking shit. I don't understand what's happening. This is I don't want to have to put in like the 5 calories that it takes to run my brain to think about this for a second. Yeah. I'm like, personally, I don't always roll my eyes. I will give just about anything a chance. I actually, like, I've harped on about it in some of my videos, but the fact is I love seasons 1 to 3 of Glee. Like, that show, for all of its problems, is actually probably one of the most perfect underdog stories I've ever seen. I will give just about anything a chance. The thing that I've been seeing, and again, this is another one of those things I've been thinking of making a video about. Rom-coms, female-oriented rom-coms, more and more have been kind of like, they seem to be getting more and more desperate, where they're like, what was the most recent one I saw was Home Again, starring what's that bitch that looks like she's been hit in the face with a fry pan?
Narrow it down.
Reese Witherspoon. So basically, she's like old and haggard now, and it's like this movie about how she's in her, like, I guess almost 50s or something, but she's still hooking up with like 20-year-old guys, and 20-year-old guys still lust after her. I'm like, nah, man. Like that's kind of like the mentality. That's what the entertainment industry is feeding to women now. It's almost like the whole Harvey Weinstein thing of all these bitches that used to fuck the guy to get good roles have now turned on him. And it's you're seeing the same thing in real life is mirroring what's happening in the movies, where these bitches are all like 50 years old now, and they're like, they still want to keep up this facade that they're young and hot, and 20-year-old studs still lust after them.
Yeah, this kind of being tickled that they're so wanted kind of thing.
Yeah. Like I said, I'll watch just about anything and I'll give anything a chance, but so much of those romantic comedies that I've seen lately are just like, come on, man. It's just getting desperate. It's desperate, and it's not entertaining. Going back to, what I've said several times before, it seems to be designed to try and appease the female's inferiority complex, where it's, you've achieved nothing, you're past your use-by date, but don't worry, here's a Hollywood film where the 25-year-old, movie producer still wants to bone you.
Yeah. Here's Lara Croft. Here's a strong action hero. The superhero movies now have these thin twig women who are flipping men that weigh 2 tons, and their IQ's north of 180, and they're flawless, and they're always looking perfect.
You know what? I can deal with that. Like I said, I can watch anything. I can suspend my disbelief. So if I'm watching a movie that stars, the Incredible Hulk and Thor, the God of Thunder, and Iron Man and whatever else, I can accept Scarlett Johansson as a super spy that can beat dudes who are like 3 times her body mass. I'll believe that. My problem is more, you get these things like, 20 years ago you had Something About Mary, right? Now it's a matter of personal taste. I've never really rated Cameron Diaz, but back when that movie was made, she was very popular. Not into her face so much, but slam and body and all of that. And now 20 years later, she's hit the wall and she's still making these shit romantic comedies where she's the old lady that guys still want. Like there was one, what was it? I saw a movie with her and Leslie Mann, The Other Woman, I think it was called, where it's just like Leslie Mann's married to this guy, and it's like, oh, what a scumbag. He fucks around on her, and his mistress is Cameron Diaz, and the mistress and the wife find out about each other, and it's basically this whole fucking lady snuff revenge porn film where they get together and devise a plan to fuck the guy over.
But here's the interesting thing. Like you said, you empty the room and now you can kind of do anything. You did a video where you kind of you showed that more people went and saw Iron Man 3 than Ghostbusters, the female Ghostbusters. They go, oh, let us do this, and then women will flock to this. Let women into the workplace here, or artificially put us in STEM, and we'll come up with a new invention, or we'll progress the world. And repetitively they do these things, say with the movie in this case, and all they can do is come back to the same trope of sexy vixen. By injecting, I can actually do everything a man does as well. So I can be the hero as well as, like, they're taking on both roles. It's kind of, the point is the guy's still the hero if he has to be, or he's this kind of archetype, but the women is kind of like, no, I have to be everything. And they don't understand that you dilute everything when
Is
you
it,
try and be everything.
what do they call them? Mary Janes, Mary Sues? I can't remember the term, but yeah, where the woman essentially. I remember reading. What was I? I can't remember who it was that did it, but it was essentially talking. I can't remember who it was, but someone did this great thing back in the day about the fact that females effectively can't have flaws. Um, Essentially, like if you a male, oh, that's what it was. I spoke about it in one of my videos. The thing about the Monkey Island and the case for Guybrush Threepwood, where it was essentially talking about a guy can be a damaged hero. Like he can be a hero and he can get the job done, but he has flaws and he gets punched in the face and, you know, bad stuff happens to him. That can't happen to female heroine. Like it's because everything that happens to them happens because they're a woman and they're being discriminated against. Like it's effectively impossible to have a female character with flaws because those flaws will basically be interpreted as because of her gender.
But then it rolls into the topic of, you know, if you've got such a blinkered view of yourself of perfection, and you want to be strong, smart, sexy, like want me but you can't have me. It's kind of like it's a dead end street. No matter what way you look at it, you're everything and you're nothing. I'm a sexy vixen, but I kick the shit out of any guy who tries to kiss me. I don't need no man, but every man wants me. It's just kind of this duality of being nowhere. And they create these things, and that's what I was going to talk. Was what I was going to mention before. They want a lot, and I don't know if it's they want this freedom and they think they're going to make these movies and then they'll be interested in this professional vocation or flock to the cinemas if there's a all-female cast in X movie. But the stats show that women are just not interested. They're kind of lazy to take any action, not just to do anything, but to be interested in anything. I know with my girlfriend, I am willing to watch, I'm similar to you, I'll watch anything that's kind of well written. If I can fall into the movie and suspend that disbelief and get engaged with it, I'll watch anything. I like a good romantic drama. But if it's more to do with real life, especially romantic dramas, because they're trying to kind of convey reality in terms of relationships, don't start in a, you know, if something's got drama at the end, stop throwing in the female superhero tropes or the feminist tropes because...
Yeah, well... I think in the case of Ghostbusters, I think that's a perfect example where, like you can't have damaged female leads. So, like if you look at the original Ghostbusters film, right, they were a bunch of schmucks. Like Bill Murray's character, Peter Venkman, in that universe, he was very upfront about the fact that he was a sleazy fraud. And they effectively got kicked out of the university they were in because they were a bunch of frauds and the university didn't want to put any more money into a bunch of guys that were trying to sell ghost research, basically. You look at the new one and it's like they got kicked out of the university and it's because they were women. It's like, oh, well, we got kicked out of the university because vagina. No. It was because... you're fucking hacks, but you can't say that because the women, anything that happens to them has to be a result of discrimination. But I don't know, man. Like I said, like other genres, like there's kind of like a, like I said, I can accept Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, who's a hot vixen that still kicks ass. I can suspend I can employ my suspension of disbelief and watch her play that role. My bigger problem is where you have, like I said, Home Again starring Reese Witherspoon, where she's still trying to do the vixen, you know, hot vixen thing, and it's kind of like, no, you're a tired old hag that looks like she's been beaten in a burlap sack. To me, I can't get past like the whole premise kind of violates the role that she's playing. Like it's like, no, you're basically a grandma. Stop trying to play off the young hot thing.
It's almost like they need to inject the political to make some sort of ripple in the movie, make it sort of give it a headline. If it had to do with just the story or the person and the thing they're going through on its own, again, women don't really care. They don't, there's not very many novelists that are women anyway. So that kind of, in terms of what's a good story or what themes they're interested in, it just all points to give us free stuff. Oh, we want to play in that. Men are hogging that playpen. They've all hogged Hollywood for so long. Let us do what we want. Hand us what we want. And it's done. And the same answer is given back, which is it's because enough wasn't done to promote the movie, or we were held back in this. It's not because the movie wasn't great and these women weren't great. It's some other reason. It's Hollywood. It's the patriarchal Hollywood system, and that now they can point to Weinstein and things like that. So when you're never responsible, going back to kind of that, if you're never responsible, it's kind of like, what's everyone supposed to do when we can't touch you? Our language, so our mouths are curtailed, our hands are handcuffed behind our back by the law, and it's like, do something. When our words and our physical, like we're eunuchs, and so even if you wanted to help, it's gotten to the point where it's, I said in my last video, it's like begging for a bully to be your best friend. So if they're like, the only way to get a mess fixed is by some form of discipline and organization and rationality, and say, okay, let's clean the rubbish up. Let's be rational for a bit. Enough of this. Even a kid gets their fill of chocolate cake, but women seem to just be gorging. And in terms of fitness, like, whichever way you look, it's kind of, no, what's the magic pill? It's like, can I be rational with you? I was actually, this actually happened. Years ago, I was dating a girl, and she was asking me about tips to she wanted to start getting in shape, and she was fine. But she was one of those that didn't eat much. So she basically had her figure because she didn't eat much and she smoked. And I said, what's your diet like? And she goes, oh, no, I eat what I eat. I've got to have my this. I've got to have my cupcake with my coffee. I love this. So she basically didn't want to give up her diet. Said, okay, so what do you do for exercise? Nah, can't do gym. I hate running. It was basically like, can you give me a magic pill? And I said, well, there's nothing. I go, you won't listen to boring rationality, and life continually, almost, you have to portray life and solutions and life going forward as being some sort of potential game show. And even relationships now, if they're boring or sedentary, it's not satisfying to them. Whereas most guys would probably welcome a sort of rudimentary relationship, because it would give guys some sort of framework to sort of have a stable life. Okay, I've got a relationship here. I can do my other shit here. I've got work. But it's like, no, she wants this all-consuming game show. And then when the ride's over, it's kind of like, it's just rinse and repeat.
Yeah. Well, I guess, there's a lot that could be said about it, but going back to something that you said a minute ago, I guess a lot of it comes down to the fact that, you could describe men as eunuchs at this point, but there's also the point that only insofar as men are going to try to continue to appease and pursue women. Like, at some point, you could still call them eunuchs, I guess, but at some point you can get to the threshold where you're just like, you know what, fuck you, I'm going off I don't need you anymore. Your vagina costs too much socially now, so I'm just going to go and ride my motorcycles and play my video games, and sure, I won't get laid, but it's only that kind of mentality of being relegated to a male eunuch, like social eunuch, only holds weight as long as you put that high of a premium on getting laid.
I agree with you, but it's not just that. I've often said that I like my girlfriend in my life, but, and I know I'd be fine on my own. I'm too old and have had too many long-term, especially relationships, to sort of, that puzzle isn't mystifying anymore. But to me, it's not just that. That's not, to me, guys with enough of those experience on average will get to that point anyway. My point is society now is that you're intruded upon and you're not left alone. So from billboards to ruining movies and strangling entertainment to a lot of the Gamergate stuff that you and Stardust have talked about, this kind of intrusion into male spaces and not leaving things alone, ruining them, being able to do whatever you want with your lives now, but you still are focused on intruding and curtailing men's spaces, and you can't come up with anything of your own. That's the frustration I have.
Yeah, I don't know that that's entirely new. I mean, you hear these stories, and I can't remember the exact century, so I'm probably wrong, but I'll just throw out and say, like, you know, like you hear these stories of women in like the 18th century and stuff wanting to shut down coffee houses because coffee houses were the congregation point for their husbands who'd go out and ignore their domestic duties and drink coffee with their friends and get rowdy. I mean, the idea of females trying to encroach on male space isn't necessarily new. I would almost say that given the fact that we are on the internet, and for all the problems that have been happening on YouTube over the last 12, 24 months, I mean, our little corner of YouTube has still been, you know, demonetization and bots notwithstanding, we still sort of say what we want and, you know, talk to people that would, you know, have a similar sort of perspective on things to what we do. Like, I would say we're like right now, we're probably freer than we've ever been from female restrictions. Like I said, I think a large part of it comes down to what you're. Yeah,
because we've effectively been given our own safe space to play in.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know, like going back to what you said before, like about, you know, liking having your girlfriend around. To be honest, I can't really agree. I mean, like I said, like the girl that I'm sort of nailing at the moment, she came over and watched an episode of Black Mirror with me and complained the entire time. Like there is like if you think about the things that we're intellectually interested in, we virtually have no common interests outside of fucking, to be honest. Like we don't really even like the same types of food and stuff. It's like it's sex and that's it. I got male friends that we had to actually delay this talk because I had a couple of friends turn up with a case of beer, and you know, I've got male friends for that. Like women, I can't even watch an hour-long science fiction show with the woman I'm nailing without her complaining. Like there's just no common interest there at all.
Oh, look, mine's slightly different, although she still does have an in-group preference. So she's still a female where, you know, she'll get pissed off, as she rightly may want to do, with, you know, Harvey Weinstein acting the way he is, right? And I'll go, yeah, what a prick. But then in our paper, you'll get some stupid whore acting a certain way, and I'll sort of voice a similar opinion about the way she did about Weinstein. And she's like, you know what? I choose not to get into any of that negative stuff. So it's kind of like, do as I say, not as I do. So it's this in-group female preference that always comes out. Even with movies, I'll give any movie a shot, but she's very limited. Like, she doesn't like science fiction. She doesn't like this, which is great. You know, I'm watching it on my own. You know, go shopping, go do something, go.
Which is fine, but I mean, for me, that's where my interest lies. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I'll watch just about anything, but you know, a lot of that stuff that I watch it's trash to me. I put it on and my brain turns off it's on in the background while I'm cooking dinner and stuff. When it comes to like sci-fi, like Westworld was great. I loved Westworld because like the fundamental ideas behind it was like the basis of human consciousness, and like the lengths to which it's acceptable to forego moral limits when you think that consciousness isn't an issue. But
Yeah.
women, I can sit down and watch trash with women, but like having that intellectual basis, I don't think it's really there for me with
Yeah.
most women.
Coterie got me onto Westworld. That was great. I remember trying to tell my girlfriend, watch it. You'd be interested. And there, from her to my sister, I've noticed, and maybe it's just in my experience, but a lot of women in my life, they're so resistant to you suggesting anything to them. Where you say, watch this. Given what I know of you, you'll probably like it in a positive. Not saying watch this bitch, but just
Yeah.
watch it. Given the way I know you, I think you'd appreciate it. It's like, nah,
Yeah.
I'll watch it another time. I don't know. Like they'll do everything to avoid it, and then later on, it's like, oh, my friend said Westworld is great, and I kind of roll my eyes. I said, that's what
Oh,
I
yeah.
told you to watch a month ago.
As soon as it's approved by other women.
Yeah, it's as soon as it's quote unquote on trend, and it's this kind of this mistrust of men, the belief in the politics that at any moment, keep the walls up because men will, not letting that pendulum swing the other way towards any kind of order in society between men and women and sort of progress, like keep that pendulum bolted to the oak tree and not trusting men and kind of just being very resistant to anything. And then at the same time wondering, where are all the good men? Why is
Yeah.
Rome burning? All of that kind of stuff. It's more frustrating to me because I was having breakfast this morning, and when I've got kids sitting behind me or in a restaurant, it affects me even more, like chaos and undisciplined behavior, because you see it everywhere, and you get so much of your fill. And I think when you start sort of being more singular or going your own way and sort of being more self-determined, you have no choice but to be more disciplined about your life because you're the only thing you stand on, your decisions, your rational choices. And then little by little, when you start living by these virtues and you see kind of the contentment you get, and this is mine. I did this and it's mine now, and I reap the benefits of the choices and the rewards. You start to see the value of organization and discipline and what it does for you. You're talking earlier about sort of getting fit, and I've always done it too. Like all these little components of your life where you are disciplined and you gain the rewards of it, and it's like pulling hen's teeth from women to try and actually get them to even lean in that direction. And it's almost like they want to create drama and they're intruding into every space. So I think I notice it the most when I'm listening to kids screaming in a coffee place. It's been said that feminism, if anything, liberated men to a certain degree. And there's a lot of things that certain men, including myself, I'm grateful for from feminism in terms of a lot of self-actualized stuff and knowledge that I probably wouldn't have had to look at because there was no need to or interest in. And I just find it amazing that women don't even have an inkling of that. And it seems that in a lot of cases, their situation can be a lot worse, but they just...
Yeah, well, I would have said, like, essentially, I guess in a lot of ways, like with the introduction of hormonal birth controls and the rise of divorce, breakdown of marriage, introduction of no fault, all of these things that have built up have essentially freed both genders from each other.
That's true.
I just don't think that women realized at the time, they still don't realize that they need men more than men need women. Like men need women for sex, but women need men for survival. It's like
that's
that's
a good topic you go on, because I was actually going to get onto that next. When survival's at stake, and it looks like survival's starting to become more at stake over the horizon. When survival was more at stake, discipline was an absolute. You know, in agrarian culture, and making sure you didn't eat next season's grains so they could grow, like being rational and disciplined and mathematically sensible. Because you don't need that survival, you haven't needed it for a while. It's kind of like it's the height of Rome times, and I'm just kind of I'm wondering what the horizon's going to be when survival now, in a very real sense, starts to peak over the horizon, and women play dumb. And I know for myself and guys in my generation that have gone through, I mean, I haven't gone through divorce, but they're not fucking going to forget. They're going to be like Holocaust survivors, who, or people have gone, you know, in their actual immediate life, they've been raped or experienced a really big trauma. No amount of sorries are going to make me give a shit. I can understand, but I am not interested anymore. So that's going to be interesting.
I think the fall of Rome is a long way away. I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime. If it does,
depends how you look at it. I actually think it's already fallen. Depends on in what way you kind of.
Well, I mean, I tend to think of it like, I know this is one of the big things that we don't agree on, but I know like Turd Fleeing Monkey talks a lot about, you know, the welfare state's running out of money and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think, as long as there's guys working and there's new income tax going into the system, I don't think the welfare state's going to run out of money. Like there's always more production that men can do. I don't see the whole, like, the social system collapsing within my lifetime, but hypothetically, even if that did happen, I think that I actually don't agree with you. I think men's memories are short, and women would play the poor victim, help me, you know, I have a child, and I think men would fall for it. I don't think that men will remember the way that you're suggesting they will.
Distally, I agree with you. I'm talking about, say, men in my or your. So I don't want to speak for you, but I know I speak to a lot of guys in my generation, just before and just after, that have gotten through a hell of a lot more. And wouldn't you know it, that's where my recording software decided to fucking stop. I'm sorry I couldn't bring the rest to you. There was about another 45 minutes of conversation left. That was fairly interesting, I think. Thanks, Colttaine, for having the chat with me, and I'll bring you more another time. Later, gentlemen. Please share, like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon once you've subscribed to be notified of my next video. And feel free to donate as well. It keeps me creating, and I really do appreciate it. Cheers.